Good morning, Tom. I know that we had a couple of technical difficulties getting started today, but I'm so excited to have you. Tom is not only a great lawyer, but a famous social media influencer. You can check out Tom at AttorneyTom, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Get at him. Tom, welcome to the show, Protecting Military Families with Chris Brochu.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. So before we get going, I want to give you an opportunity. You are one of probably the top 10 attorney social media influencers that we have present day. So please share with us, kind of how you got started with that. I know we have a lot of small business owners that listen in. What can they do to pump up their social media? Can you tell us a little bit about yours and also tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, how I got started, and that's an easy question to answer. Out of pure necessity, I started my own law firm when I was 24 years old, very recently out of law school. And quite frankly, I just didn't have any money, so I couldn't pay for advertising. So I started making videos, and then flash forward a few years, it really started taking off. And then flash forward a few more years, and I think I'm the most watched lawyer on Facebook, and one of the highest on YouTube. In 2021, I did about 280 million views on my YouTube channel, and my Facebook channel does roughly about 100 million minutes watched a quarter. So it just started by pure necessity. Before this, I actually didn't have any social medias or wasn't competent on any social medias. I was always the guy in school and college and high school that everybody made fun of because I didn't have Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But I did it because it was a necessity, and I don't know, now I love it. Now I love making videos.
Absolutely. And I actually found you, Tom, on Facebook. I was on my Facebook page, and I'm looking through in one of the suggested posts. And this is what I love, that one of the things that Tom does is most people that aren't lawyers would never see what a deposition looks like, right? So for any of the big, corporate rep depots and any big witnesses in any case, we usually video record them. So you get a little bit more out of a video recorded deposition than you do just by reading a deposition transcript. And in particular, I saw Tom doing a video about Lil Wayne's deposition. And that's kind of what led me to reach out to Tom. And I knew he'd be a great fit. So Tom, that's incredible about your success on Facebook and YouTube. Can you tell us, where can they find you? What could they type in? Where do they subscribe?
Yeah. So my two biggest channels are Facebook and YouTube, and all of my branding is Attorney Tom. Even my law firm's branding is Attorney Tom and Associates. And again, that's because the social media has kind of taken a life of its own. So we're just trying to make everything congruent.
Absolutely. And when you start your own firm at 24, and just so everybody knows, that's a little bit earlier than most attorneys. I mean, even if you went directly out of undergrad to law school, your typical age is probably 25 that you're even able to sit for the bar. Is that?
Yeah, I graduated undergrad in 2.5 years, and I graduated law school in 2.5 years. And I did take a 6-month break because when I graduated undergrad, it was in winter, and I didn't start till the next fall. And I clerked at a law firm for those 6 months. But yeah, I mean, I went through school pretty quick, so I was able to get out, and I just became a lawyer when I was young.
Definitely. And Tom, I know that I know this, but I want to talk to listeners about it. Your dad's a lawyer, right? Is that how you got into civil litigation? What
Correct.
What made you so passionate about helping people?
Yeah, well, so both my parents are actually lawyers. My parents actually met in law school.
Oh, your mom's a lawyer too.
Correct. She doesn't really practice anymore. But my father, I did not reinvent the wheel. I'll be the first one to tell you that. My father's an excellent trial lawyer in catastrophic injury, and my dad has tried hundreds of cases. Some of the most important and landmark cases probably in the country in the front of catastrophic injury. And I would grow up, when I was growing up, he would pull me out of school to go watch trials, whether it be his trial or one of his friends' trials. And so I was always seeing trial lawyers. And for anybody who's not in the legal field, you might make this characterization that all lawyers are trial lawyers, but that's really not the case. It's really a small fraction. Most lawyers are stuck behind an office doing transactional work, pushing paper. And I knew that I wanted to be a trial lawyer. And following with my backstory, all I wanted to do was work for my father and work for his firm. But my father's my best friend. He's my mentor. He'll help me, give me any advice that I need. But he is very anti-nepotism. And so he wouldn't give me a job. And he told me, you got to go work for somebody for 5 years, 6 years, prove your worth, and then I'll consider hiring you. And I said, okay, well, if you're not going to hire me, I don't want to go work for somebody else. I'm just going to start my own law firm.
I love it.
And I did, and I found a whole bunch of momentum. And actually, within a year, he offered me a job. But by that point, I had already, the math wouldn't work for me to go then work for him. So then, now I have my own law firm. I always joke with him. I say I'm trying to run him out of business.
Oh yeah. Well, you do live in Texas, so there's a lot of people there that need help. And I'm glad that you stuck to it, because there are not enough people out there, including attorneys, that see the value in representing people. But it really is not only incredible work. I mean, I only represent people too. I don't represent any businesses or insurance companies, but I think that it's so vital to spread the word about the people that do only represent people, because you got to be passionate to do the type of work that we do, and you got to care about people. And I really do think that's a great story. So what types of legal areas do you practice at your firm?
Yeah, so now my firm, we have 4 offices: Houston, Texas, where I'm based out of; Lake Charles, Louisiana; New Orleans, Louisiana; and Sneads Ferry, North Carolina, which is essentially Wilmington. We have the closest office to the Camp Lejeune.
Right. We were talking about that.
With respect to practice areas, it's about 50% catastrophic personal injury, which is the vast majority of my practice, what I'm working on day to day. Our Louisiana office, the lawyers over there do primarily first-party insurance. And I'm licensed, by the way, in Louisiana and Texas. So if a catastrophic injury case comes in from Louisiana, I'll probably still handle it, but just from our Houston headquarters. But the lawyers in our Louisiana
circuit covered.
Could you repeat that?
I said you almost have the whole Fifth Circuit covered.
Right. That's right. But the Louisiana lawyers, they will primarily work on first party insurance cases. So what that is we represent property owners against their own insurance carrier. The past few years in Louisiana have been really, really tough. In 2020, Hurricane Laura and Delta hit Southwest Louisiana, the Lake Charles area. And then last year, Hurricane Ida hit Southeast Louisiana. And I know Florida is going through something very similar with Hurricane Ian as well. So that makes about, I would say 50% of our practice is first party insurance, 50% is catastrophic personal injury. It's pretty much divided up between the lawyers. Again, for instance, I'm really only going to be touching catastrophic injury cases for the most part. Of course, I'll, do miscellaneous things here and there. And then additionally, on top of that, we do some mass torts, some things like the Camp Lejeune litigation that is just at the forefront. I mean, we're at the very beginning of that, just from the nature of the stage of where the litigation's at. So I'm sure as that ramps up, that will take up more of our time.
Absolutely. And I want to spend some time to talk about the catastrophic injury type cases in a moment, but you
Sure.
brought up first party property. I want to just clarify a few things for the listeners out there too. So we know that hurricanes are covered, Hurricane Ian, Irma, Katrina, all those big types of hurricanes that roll through the Southeast. What about, does your firm do roofing claims, cast iron pipes? Is that all part of first party property that you do as well?
Yeah, so that's all part of party property. What I would say with my firm is we kind of take the same motto as catastrophic injury, in that, if you have a single roof claim that, we're talking about a 10 square roof, and or a 20 square roof, and it's 10 or 20 or $30,000, that's probably not big enough for us to get in. My shop, we're 4 lawyers and 10 people total. My business model is really high value cases that we are going to work to death. So I do not take a lot of quantity. I take very high end cases that we can put a whole lot of effort into and really maximize the value. So if somebody called my firm and said, hey, I just have a roof issue, or there's a hailstorm, and the insurance carrier is refusing to replace my roof, I'd probably say, hey, listen, this is probably too small for us to handle. However, there are 1,000 firms out there that are equipped to handle these type of claims that maybe have more volume, or more of a volume shop. I have no problem making a recommendation to a lawyer that I trust, that can, or a law firm that I trust, that's better suited to handle this type of claim.
Absolutely. And I think, even just setting up a person with another attorney, referring them over, getting them that contact information, that's really half the battle. That when I get calls, if it's something I don't do, I try to at least help the person find somebody, because it is tough. You go into Google, you can't sometimes figure out the lawyers from the advertisers. So
yeah, that's right. And I think the value of a claim, I think what a lot of people don't realize is the value of a claim can vary drastically depending on the type of lawyer you get. I like to use the analogy. I tell people when they call my office for something that I don't do, like if somebody called my office about an immigration issue or a criminal issue, what I tell them, I said, look, you need a heart surgeon. If you have heart surgery, you want a heart surgeon. You could have hired the best orthopedic surgeon in the world, but he's an orthopedic surgeon. You don't want the best orthopedic surgeon doing your heart surgery. You want a heart surgeon.
Right.
And so it is very important for people to get linked up with the right lawyer. And then also, I think it's very important for lawyers, when people call them, to not cave in and take the quick buck and, sign somebody up, but rather get them to somebody who is their heart surgeon. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's something that I see a lot. There are many real world examples of this. For instance, I'm not going to use names or even details, but there was a nationwide terrible catastrophic injury. It was all over the news. Every catastrophic injury lawyer in the world would have wanted this case. Okay. In somehow, some way, this case landed with a family law attorney who specializes in divorce and divorce, child custody issues in Houston. I think they were cousins or family friends or something. Somehow, some way, this lawyer in the Houston, Texas community got this huge mega case, and they got greedy and tried to handle this case themselves, and ended up resolving it for literally probably 1 or 2 cents on the dollar. If I gave away any more info, it would give away too many details, but it's just who you hire really does matter. And I think from a lawyer's perspective too, there's a certain integrity with getting a phone call and saying, hey, listen, I'm not your heart surgeon. Let me find you your heart surgeon. That doesn't mean you still can't add value to the claim and co-counsel it and learn, but you need to place people in the right area or with the right people.
It's such a great point. And one of the things that when we get, we filed class actions and do some of these bigger cases. I mean, we were always investigating some pretty high value claims. Attorneys sometimes, I think, maybe a little bit of ego comes into play, right? So it's like, I'm going to handle all of this myself. And it's like, well, if you brought on, a firm that's really good at class cert and a firm that's really good at, design defect or whatever,
right?
You can have 6 or 7 really good attorneys working on that file that know how to navigate it and really maximize that. But I'm with you. You see people post, and the Camp Lejeune ones disgust me. I really because I see people that they could give a crap about, veterans or military families. It's like a quick buck, but they'd rather chew off their left arm than litigate a case in federal court. So it's like, what are we doing here? Just stop. Go, please do whatever you prefer to do.
Right. That's right.
And I don't say that to be rude. It's just, I don't think that if you represent people, you should do that. I think if you feel confident that you can, you should. And so I'm glad that you guys feel the same way. And for catastrophic injury cases, are you talking about someone losing their life, losing a limb? What other types of catastrophic injuries? Severe burns?
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. So it can take a number of different shapes. Obviously, wrongful death is a big part of our practice. But for instance, my biggest verdict, my biggest ever trial verdict, and total disclaimer, just like what we were talking about, I was part of a trial team. I was just on the team. I was definitely not, the sole lawyer on this. But the biggest trial team I was ever a part of, we got a $12,450,000 verdict on a trucking case.
Phenomenal.
The injuries and the reason why this case was really important and why it went to trial was our client was hit by an 18-wheeler and she developed something called trigeminal neuralgia. Now, what trigeminal neuralgia is, this is nobody can hear me, or the radio, they won't be able to hear me, but your trigeminal nerve basically runs down your jaw. Okay. It's basically from your ear to your jaw. Trigeminal neuralgia, if you look it up on Wikipedia, it's called trigeminal neuralgia, also known as the suicide disease, because people who get it just end up killing themselves because it is so unbearably painful. Okay. Our client got hit. The way she contorted her body after being hit by an 18-wheeler driver, she developed trigeminal neuralgia. Now, if you look at her from the outside, she looks totally fine. And it's one of those diseases where she might go a week without it flaring up, or 2 weeks without it flaring up. But once it flares up, and by the way, it flares up by just using your jaw. So talking, eating, brushing your teeth, anything that involves jaw movement that you just cannot get out of your life can pinch that trigeminal nerve, and it's excruciating, unbearable pain. So she might be going about her life, and then boom, she has an episode and she has to be bedridden for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. She can't talk. It hurts to eat. It hurts to breathe. But she might go 2 weeks and look totally fine. So from the outsider's perspective, and when you're looking at her, she's not hurt. Look at her. She just looks normal. And that's really what the defense was banking on. They were saying, look, she's a normal girl. We're not going to give this girl millions, let alone tens of millions of dollars, right? So, but to me, that's catastrophic. She'll have that for the rest of her life. I mean, you couldn't pay me. I mean, if we could get her on the phone and we gave her the choice of giving back. Actually, by the way, the case is still on appeal. But, in theory, if we could call her and say, hey, listen, would you rather have the money or would you go back in time and have this never happen? She wouldn't hesitate to give the money back, right?
Right.
So catastrophic injury can be a wide variety of things. I mean, I just resolved a case a couple months ago. It was a wrongful death case. That speaks for itself. What is losing a loved one worth? And everything in between. Yesterday, you and I were talking about the refinery incident case I'm dealing with, and that has to deal with third-degree burns. Some people who have third-degree burns all over their body from being caught in a refinery explosion. So it just depends. It's kind of like the saying, it when you see it. But I'm a big believer in pain and suffering and the non-economic damages. I don't think somebody's worth should be tied to their ability to earn income. So, even if you take somebody who's making minimum wage or $10 an hour or whatever it is, if they're going to be in constant pain for the rest of their life or inhibited from doing the activities that they love, such as walking or playing with their children or their grandchildren, to me, that's priceless.
I agree completely. I mean, lost wages and medical bills tell one side of the story, but you put a pebble in your shoe for the next 40 years, right?
Right.
It's not going to be very comfortable. And that's what a lot of the, I think insurance companies don't get. And I think a lot of people understand that is that when you break a bone and they set it and it's healed in 6 or 8 weeks and you never have to treat it again, right? Because it's now healed, right? If it's healed properly and you don't have any other injuries, right? That
Right.
may not be the same as somebody with lingering condition that needs injections and all these different things for the rest of their life, right? I mean,
Sure.
That's kind of what you're talking about, that day-to-day, can't cook, can't clean without, pain.
Right. That's exactly right.
So when we talk about the different locations that you have, catastrophic injury cases, are you just taking those in the states where you have offices, or do you take those all over the country?
So that's it. The short answer is it depends. For instance, in January, I got a phone call to my office. Hey, Tom, I was on an oil field in Wyoming and I broke my back. A pipe fell on me. I broke my back. I'd never been to Wyoming in my life. So what I did is I found him a heart surgeon in, Wyoming, and I can still co-counsel and give my, give my thoughts and strategy and, but with respect to showing up to the date, the hearings and, conducting the discovery on-site inspections, coordinating with the experts, all that kind of stuff, that's going to be handled by the Wyoming lawyer that I found, the heart surgeon that I found.
Right.
And so the short answer is it depends. I mean, just the nature of where my social media reach has taken me. I get a lot of inquiries from all over the country. Now, 99.9% of the time, it's not a case that I'm going to accept, but, we're just getting, a whole bunch of people reaching out. And, if something comes in that is worthy of, the metrics that we're looking for, then, we'll take a deep dive into how we can help, or at the very least provide value if we can't work hands-on with it.
Certainly. And, I don't have nearly or a fraction of the following that you have, but I get different service members and veterans from around the country that will reach out. A lot of the VA disability I can help with because you just have to have your VA accreditation, but they'll get into an auto accident up in a different state or do different things. We still have the ability to find them or help them find an attorney. And I think that's one of the most important parts about social media, is that a lot of consumers and military families, they may not know an attorney in their local area, right? So they may know, a family law attorney, or they may know a personal injury attorney or one specialty, but if you ever have a question, I think this is so important for people to know, reach out to us, right? If you're involved in a legal incident, you need to find someone. We have the ability to do that. And I don't know how Tom does it. I've got this platform that I use where I can find different firms or different attorneys. But if you're having trouble finding somebody, reach out to a lawyer that you know and trust, even if it's somebody that you just watch and like, because time is always of the essence. If you wait too long, or you Google somebody and they pass you to different places and you don't get your claim filed, time is limited and it may be time barred. So I just want to always say that, because for whatever reason, we always somewhat encounter, right at the end of the statute of limitations deadline or time deadline. So,
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have experienced that as well, but
all the time. Somebody reached out to our office last week. I forget exactly what state. It was either Indiana or Illinois. But their father, like 4 or 5 years ago, their father was killed by an 18-wheeler. They were under the age of 18 at the time. And for anybody who doesn't know, just depending on the state, potentially your ability to bring a claim doesn't start until you reach 18. So for instance, if the statute of limitations in that particular state is 2 years, it's not running until you hit 18, and then 18, 19, 20. So basically you have 2 years from your birthday to bring a claim. And so we were looking into it to see if it was time barred, but this particular state, the way their wrongful death statute was written, it was time barred. And so it's one of those things where the poor kid just simply said, I just didn't know how things work. And it never even crossed my mind to look into getting me and my family a lawyer. And it was too late for him. He's time barred from bringing a claim.
It's a shame. That's one of those Kobe Bryant type rules. I think Kobe was one of the first cases that I had ever heard about where somebody was under the age of 18, right? Isn't that what happened? Did you ever hear his case? I think the first contract or deal he signed, he was 17.
Interesting.
Yeah, take a look at that one. So on the other side of the hour, we're going to talk about or the other part of the show. I want to talk about economic and non-economic harm. And I want to sort of tease that with, at the end, we're going to talk about what someone's case is worth and how you determine the value, right? So,
sure.
If you've got somebody who is retired with no minor kids, who doesn't have income coming in, wow, that was difficult, or somebody with a young family who has this lifelong injury, how that varies. So, Tom, because you deal with so many different catastrophic cases, and I brought you on this show because we love hearing you talk about different things. Walk us through how you do an intake to figure out economic and non-economic harm for your clients.
Sure. So first, let's take a step back and let's talk about the 3 things that are necessary to prevail on a personal injury claim. Okay. And again, people on the radio aren't going to be able to see this, but I usually use the example of a tripod. Okay. There are 3 things you need to prevail on a personal injury case. You need liability, damages, and pockets to pay. Okay. And you need all 3. And I use the example of a tripod where if you only have 2 legs of the tripod standing, the tripod's going to fall over. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, let's start with liability. It has to be the other person's fault. Okay. So if you're on your phone, texting, drunk driving, not paying attention to the road, and you swerve and you swerve into oncoming traffic and an 18-wheeler hits you and, you're catastrophically injured, well, you're not going to prevail on that claim because the incident was your fault. So it has the liability. It has to be the other party's fault. Additionally, getting more into the liability aspect of it, the real world, it's never clear cut. right? It's never just, oh, it's 100% this person's fault, and only in very rare occasions. Okay. So the way it works, where ultimately, if a case goes to a jury is going to have to sign percentages of fault. So they might say Chris is 75% at fault and Tom is 25% at fault, assuming, you and I got into a car accident with each other. Then, and then that kind of goes into the damages, depending on the state, that might discount the damages. For instance, if the jury awards me $100 and says I am 25% at fault for my accident, well, then I can only collect $75, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a discount, and sometimes we get cases that are relatively close, right? We get cases that are right on that 50-50, 51-49 line, and you have to give the liability discount, right? Where if this case might be worth $100, but it's real close on liability, well, you might be settling that case for $50 or $60 or whatever. So that's the first tripod, liability. Second tripod, second pillar is damages. What are the damages? So let me give another severe example. Let's just say you have an 18-wheeler driver from a nationally billion-dollar trucking company.
Right.
This 18-wheeler driver doesn't have a commercial driver's license. He's never been trained to operate an 18-wheeler. He's drunk. He's overworked. He's been on the road for 30 hours straight. He's fallen asleep at the wheel.
Black widows,
Right. Just the worst example you could ever think of. And he falls asleep and he swerves over to oncoming traffic where you're driving, and he love taps you, and he just skims your car and you're not hurt at all. Well, that's incredible liability. There's definitely pockets to pay because it's a huge national company, but there's no damages. So you need damages. And again, you just kind of have to go off the motto, you know it when you see it, right?
Yep.
I love people who try to, I know personal injury lawyers get a bad rap or bad name, ambulance chaser, all these kind of things. But logistically, if somebody comes to my office, and the way we work is all my work is off contingency fee. I've never billed an hour in my life. So I get paid, I get a percentage of what we recover if and only if we recover. Okay. Right. So what does that tell you from a business perspective as somebody who's got a lot of mouths to feed? I only want to take cases that I think I can win. So if a scam artist comes to me and says, hey, this happened to me and I want to sue, I want to scheme and take these people for everything they're worth, even though I'm not hurt. Well, juries aren't dumb. Juries are normal people. They're going to see right through all that BS. Yeah. And so, I love when people correlate catastrophic injuries with frivolous lawsuits, and they just economically, it just does not make sense. Now, I do think there are frivolous lawsuits, but most frivolous lawsuits that I've seen are directed by people with tons of money to bully people who don't have money, who can't afford lawyers.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. How many times have you seen an insurance company pay out when they're at fault, right?
Right.
And it's a slam dunk versus not pay. There's a whole lot more in the second bucket where you got to fight them for 2 years to get paid. Right. And that's the other part too, that we need to sort of, and I think we're working on it as a community. Everybody pays insurance, right? Why should anyone feel guilty? If you get your bumper ripped off, why do you feel guilty about suing one of these major companies? I think it's because all of their, face people, right? You got a little gecko, you got a
that's right. They spend billions of dollars a year telling you that they're your neighbor, they're your friend. Yeah. They'll be there for you in the tough times. And there's a reason why they can spend billions of dollars a year. It's because they're making billions of dollars. And I have really never seen a worse example than these Louisiana storms that my team has been working on. Over the past two and a half years, I've sat in people's living rooms, Miss Smith, who's like your grandma, who's just on a fixed income, maybe has a $100,000 house that has $80,000 worth of damage to it, and insert whatever insurance carriers paying her a fraction of what she needs to repair her house. And she'll just look at us and say, y'all are real sweet. Thanks for coming out. I'm just not the suing type. And, she's just gonna live with her broken home forever,
Yep.
And, I get it to an extent, but, it is sad to see. At the end of the day, you're enforcing your contractual right. And, I have no evidence to prove this, but if I'm putting my conspiracy tinfoil hat on, what I think these insurance carriers do is they go, okay, we're going to pay 20 cents on the dollar across the board because we know only 25 to 30% of the people will actually end up hiring lawyers and suing us. So who cares if for those people we end up having to pay the full value of the claim plus penalties plus attorney's fees, because we make so much money back on the delta, on the difference, that it's just so profitable for us to take this, come and fight me stance that we're going to win in the long run tenfold. But yeah, so going back to the original conversation.
Tom, what's the third leg? That's what we're.
Yes. Yeah. Going back to the third leg. So the third leg is pockets to pay.
Most important.
And let me give you.
I think my own personal humble opinion.
Right. Right. And so let me give you an example. Let's just say, God forbid, I'm driving and a drunk driver who is in a stolen car, who doesn't have a job, doesn't have any assets, comes and runs a red light and kills me. Well, you can't squeeze blood from an orange, right? Or a turnip, or whatever the phrase is.
Yeah, my friend Dan Perone says you can't squeeze water out of a rock.
Right.
And
so that what is that death worth? Unfortunately, it's nothing. Another example is in Texas, the minimum liability insurance is $30,000. So, if you're insured and you have the very baseline policy, which most policies are baseline policies for normal people. So let's run that same example back. Now, let's say that drunk driver is just a minimum wage, $10 an hour worker, or just a normal person or whatever. And they run a red light and they kill me. And they have a minimum wage policy, they have a minimum policy, a $30,000 policy under the state. What is my death worth? My death is worth $30,000 because that is all that's available. So liability, damages, pockets to pay. You need all three of them for to assess what your case value is worth.
Completely agree. I think one of the biggest things or challenges that when I get calls, people are like, I want to sue, name a person individually. Okay.
Right.
Their insurance is tendered the 30, if we're using your example, the 30,000 cap, but I want to go after them personally. Well, for what? Right.
Right.
You have a piece of paper and it sucks. I hate it. It absolutely kills me because the liability's there. The damages are certainly there, but that's kind of how our system works. And that's why I always do try to tell all the listeners, Tom, and I don't know if you all have this in Texas and if you agree with this, but uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage here in Florida, because we have 20 million uninsured drivers, is so critical. Because if you do get hit by that uninsured party or that underinsured party, you can still help yourself.
Absolutely. Yes, I could not agree more. And we have seen that time and time again, people calling our office saying, hey, I got hit by somebody who doesn't have insurance. Then we, okay, well, what's your policy say? Oh, it's like, well, I only have liability insurance only. It's like, okay, well, you know, you saved about $15 a month, but now you don't have any ability to fix your car, to fix your claim, to move on.
Oh, for sure. And I gripe about it all the time on this show. Casey's heard me talk about it. Accidental death and dismemberment, despise it. I think it's like selling Powerball tickets, but underinsured and uninsured, I do see the value. You got to get it stacked. Remember to get it stacked, folks. If you have multiple vehicles, you got to get it stacked if you're going to buy it. That's just my opinion. What that means is if you had 3 vehicles and you had 100,000 on each vehicle, if you stack it, you now can go after 300,000 of coverage if it's available, as opposed to non-stacked on each claim. So Tom, I know that we talked about this, and I love the example of the tripod. The example I use or give when I talk about it is usually like a math equation, like this plus this plus this equals, settlement, whatever.
Right.
Let's talk about it. It's an important question and we get it all the time. What's the value of a case? I mean, it's so difficult because the client wants a finite answer, but how do you answer it?
The first thing we do is we walk them through the tripod analysis.
Okay. All right. Tripod. Got it.
Yeah, that's going to be the most important thing. So, but then let's take this hypothetical to where I think people naturally want it to go, which is, let's just say you find the quote unquote perfect injury case. Liability is clear, damages are clear, and there's unlimited pockets to pay, right? So I think that's instantly where people go, even if that is not what their claim is, because I just think obviously it's very personal and people think, hey, I'm suffering through this and my claim is worth $1 bazillion, and that they don't see that. But so what is an injury claim worth, assuming all the other factors are there? And again, we talked about this earlier. It's going to depend on what the longevity of the situation looks like. And I really only focus on non-economics. I think in very, very rare circumstances, it's only appropriate to bring up economic damages in very, very rare circumstances. I know that's a lot of people listening to this might seem taken back by that. But like, for instance, when we got our $12,450,000 verdict, we didn't submit any economic damages. And our strategy is to generally not submit economic damages because we think that they're just too low of an anchor. I mean, again, if you're making $100,000 a year and you're 60 years old and you only have 10 years left in the working force, that's $1 million of economic damages. But being in pain for the rest of your life is worth significantly more, in my opinion, than just $1 million or $100,000 a year or whatever, however you equate it to be. So, unless you're an extremely high earner and your economic damage, or you're a business owner, or any of those things, we generally do not like to focus on economic damages. Again, that's there might be some lawyers who disagree with that. However, in our history, our success, which is pretty good, all of our cases we're focusing on mental anguish, pain, and suffering. What is being bedridden worth? What is being in constant pain worth? What is not being able to enjoy time with your family? Loss of consortium, loss of life, loss of quality of life. And again, it's one of those things where you just have to see it. You have to live with it. If anybody, one of the most famous lawyers of all time is a gentleman by the name of Jerry Spence.
Love his great book.
Yeah, if anybody is interested, He's got great books, not just about lawyers, but just about persuasion and how to win people over and how to win arguments. And I would really recommend listening to the audiobooks because he narrates them. And he's got this beautiful, deep voice. And but anyway, Jerry Spence talks about going and putting yourself into the client's shoes. And then any lawyer who's going to go try a case needs to go live with the client for at least a day. And so that means, and living like the client. Jerry Spence gives this great example. He was representing somebody who was paralyzed in an accident. And so what he did was, in the months leading up to the trial, I think it was for a whole week, or maybe it wasn't a whole week, maybe it was a weekend or 3 days or 4 days. He lived with his client and he basically tied up his legs and could only live as if he was paralyzed. And so, he needed help getting out of bed. He needed getting help putting into his wheelchair, reaching the cabinets. It's the things that you don't think about. What is standing up to reach to the top cabinet to get a plate worth? And then when you realize that you can no longer do that, or going for a stroll in the park. And those are the things that you really can't put a feel on or feel for until you actually see it. So we spend a whole lot of time with our clients to really get a feel for what those damages are. In the instance of a wrongful death, everybody takes wrongful death different. How does somebody quantify the loss of their child? I just resolved a case a month or two ago, and it was I represented a father who lost his son. What is that worth, and how do people take that? And some people handle it better than others, right? Some people take some people shut down. Some people find a support group and it helps them work through it. Not to say that it makes the pain any easier, but those are the kind of things that you can quantify and you can touch. And at the end of the day, if you have quote unquote the perfect personal injury case where there's unlimited pockets to pay, then you have to worry about getting in front of a jury and determining what is something fair to ask. Because if you come in and just say an absurd number, like if I had a $1 million case and I walked into a jury and I said, hey, members of the jury, I want $100 million. Well, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Yep.
They're going to say these people are just greedy pieces of shit. I don't know if I can cuss on the radio. I apologize.
No, you're all good.
Yeah. They're going to say these people are greedy and we're not going to give them anything.
Yeah.
So, it's not a unlimited piggy bank.
You can quantify it too, right? I mean, $10 a day, right? I mean, what do you live with pain in your back? $10 a day? I mean, what if you had to live for 60 years? That's a way to quantify it, right?
Right, that's right.
Minimum wage to live the rest of your life in pain,
that's exactly right. So those are things when we're building out or when we're explaining to the jury why we believe their case is worth X. We'll take a look at, life expectancy, what their day-to-day life is like, what their passions were before. For instance, if somebody was if their passion was playing video games, right, and they're a huge video game player and they get injured but they can still play video games, right? There might be some damages because obviously life doesn't revolve around just playing video games, but at least you can play, at least you can do what you love to do. Right. Whereas, like for me, I'm a big golfer. I love golf. I played golf in college. If my hobby got taken away from me, I would be personally devastated. Right. And so then it's just things like that you'd have to. It's just such a hard question to answer without going through each specific case. But when we do have a client that comes in And, the first stage is discovery, because all of these things don't come out. I don't know what a case is worth on the onset, because I have to figure out, okay, I have to figure out the liability issue. I have to figure out the damages issue. And a lot of the times, unless it's a wrongful death, you really don't know the extent of the damages until, after constant medical treatment and, getting a real understanding of what's going on. And then the pockets to pay, how much insurance policies there are. A lot of these insurance carriers, they play games, especially on the catastrophic end of cases. They might tender $1 million policy, and then, but that's not all there is. There's umbrella coverage, there's additional coverages, things like that. But when it comes time to, either go mediate the case, or if the mediation fails, go to trial, we like to give them a range. We'll sit with a client and we'll say, okay, we think your case is worth, $3 to $5 million or whatever,
Right.
whatever it ends up being. And we talk them through it, and ultimately it's the client's case, right? They're the ones who are going to have to approve everything. At least on the settlement front. If it's a jury verdict, you just get what the jury tells you. But I mean that, it's a very fluid conversation. So
Absolutely. And Tom, we're out of time today. Absolutely enjoyed our conversation. Thanks so much for not only taking your time on the show, but Tom has given me a number of tips for social media influencing and different things. He's great guy. We're rooting for him. We hope that your success goes right to the moon. And it's easy to see how you've created such a strong following. Great guy, great attorney. If you need to find him, please go to AttorneyTom on social media or his website. If you need to find me, the legal bro is going to be the way to do it. Christopher Brochu, protecting military families, and Case at Brochu Law if you need any help. We'll see you all next week. Thank you. All right. That should do it.